Ever stared at your dusty old office corners wishing for a legit at-home studio? On today's video, we're pulling back the curtain on how we upgraded a spare bedroom into a full-fledged video podcast studio with 3 cameras, 2 microphones, no massive budget, no warehouse needed. So if you're ready to ditch the excuses and build the content space you always wanted, let's dive in. Hey, welcome to PSS. This is Get Creative, and I'm Steven. Every Wednesday, I share my favorite creative media tools with you. We unpack them and review them so that you can learn how to level up your content and build your influence online. Today is an extra special treat because we are unpacking the ultimate 3-camera, 2-microphone video podcast setup. This is the same setup used by all of the famous podcasters. Think Diary of the CEO, the Rich Roll Podcast, Huberman Labs, the School of Greatness, Impact Theory. It goes on and on. And it's a 2-microphone with an audio interface, 3 cameras, really professional setup. However, this setup for many of us can feel far out of reach and overwhelming, but don't worry, we're gonna break down every step of the process from the remodel to the equipment you'll need, to tips and tricks, to the workflow, recording and editing after you've recorded the footage. This way you can determine what is accessible to you, what's realistic for the stage that your show and your podcast is in right now, and get excited about upgrading your space into a legitimate content studio. And I'm gonna share our method of iteration and marginal improvements with you so that you can start with where you're at, with where your budget's at, and build and add to your show over time to eventually have a full-fledged content marketing production studio right in your home or at your office. And I know that you've been dreaming about all of this beautiful gear. Not only do you want it, but you might be concerned if you'd ever be able to know how to use it. I'm here to tell you that it's actually very simple. It's a lot more intimidating than it seems. You just have to slow down, take it one piece of equipment at a time, and before you know it, you will be a master of all things video and audio production. But I think it's time that we get right to the good stuff. The reason you're here, let's start remodeling that boring ass spare bedroom of yours. And as a reminder, we are going to divide this video into 4 parts for your convenience. You can find the timestamps below. Make sure you save this video, like this video, so you can always come back to it later. First, we're talking about studio makeover, converting that room into something that looks good on camera. The first 2 points we're gonna cover have everything to do with your face. First, the studio makeover, the backdrop, and then we'll talk about acoustic treatment and what's necessary. Finally, we'll move on to all of the equipment. I'll give you a brief overview of this professional setup that the top pros are using, and we'll finish up with file management, editing, and workflow. Now you've recorded all this sweet footage on 3 different cameras. What do we do with it next? So the studio that I'm sitting in right now has been an ongoing process and we'll never be finished with it. I wish I could say this was something that we designed in a weekend, but actually it's something we've been working on for years. We first moved into this house a few years ago, and what attracted us to it was that it had this 3rd floor that we could convert into our production facility. But it was boring and covered with carpet and just your standard at-home spare bedroom or somewhere you would stick your mother-in-law. So we had to liven it up right off the bat. And that was no cheap task because Veronica, my partner in crime, has incredibly expensive taste. So we had to get to work right off the bat, ripping up the carpet and replacing it with a sexy hardwood floor. So here we are, the first day of painting up here in the studio area. And Veronica's freaking out a little bit.
Yeah, I am.
Wondering.
I'm not sure about the black paint anymore.
Then we had to immediately get rid of those white walls. White walls are horrible on camera. And if you have white walls, I highly recommend paint and wallpaper right off the bat. We decided to go with a near black color, and we love the Benjamin Moore paints, the Mercedes of paint. And of course, it wouldn't be complete if we didn't order our own PSS neon sign to put in the background. And we got some barn doors that I ordered on Amazon. I had to custom cut the bottom of them. And it's a pretty Jimmy rigged job at the bottom if you were to look at it, but you don't really see how bad my sawing was on camera. This was to cover the windows in the background. The first thing you're gonna need to do in your space is get rid of that natural light. We need to rely only on studio light. The sunlight is way too volatile and unpredictable, and it will really mess with your footage over time. We need to be able to set our cameras into a manual exposure mode, get those cameras set properly for the light settings in our studio, set it and forget it, so that we can get cooking every week and make sweet and juicy content without having to reset up all of our equipment. So the first thing we had to do was cover our skylights and cover the windows with some barn doors. And as I said, after we got the floor finished and this first black coat of paint on, that was all we had for the budget and really for the energy at the time. And we started making content right there with what we had. It wasn't until much later when we were ready for an additional upgrade that we said we we've really got to do something about these ugly white panels and white shelves. We really got to do something about these white walls. So we found some stylish, crazy ass wallpaper that we could hang up. And I also got to work painting a beautiful green color that's on brand for us all over the panels and onto the shelves that you see behind me here. Finally, I got inspired by Pinterest and even Martha Stewart, because that woman is really good at designing shelves, to decorate our shelves with all sorts of objects that mean something to us, but that also have cool color and cool symbolism. And this is where it's important to think about what's going to be in the background of your shot. The things that you put in frame with you can tell them a little bit about your story. Notice in the background, you see a viola, you see a guitar amp, there's a rhinoceros, there's all sorts of equipment and microphones. And then there's also these heads, these different creative heads. Well, we're creative media. So we have books, we have erudition, we're educational. So whatever your brand is, whatever kind of personality traits that you want to give off, you can do that and you can reinforce who you are. You can reinforce what your brand stands for by the objects you decide to place in the background. Now, this is where the 3-camera setup actually gets very tricky. And this is one of many reasons that I advise video creators and podcasters when they're first starting out to just work with 1 camera. And that's because you only have to design 1 backdrop, 1 wall behind you. The second you get 3 cameras in the mix, now you've got to actually design 3 different walls depending on where you set yourself up in your room. So that's something to keep in mind. This camera is going to see what's behind me, but a camera over here is going to see that wall over there. The more cameras you have, the more coverage of the room you're going to see. So the more you'll really have to completely deck out and design your entire room. Otherwise, if you just start with 1 camera, you can leave most of your spare bedroom torn apart, unfinished, and not looking very good, because that doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is what the camera sees, and that can just be a single wall. Once you have things looking good, and let me stress good at this stage, because it's something you can upgrade to. So just pick a color that you like and paint the wall a single color. Maybe get some shelves, put something on shelves behind you, get a fun lamp, or get a fake tree. That really is enough to get started. And then that will let you know after you've made a bunch of videos how you want to improve your background. So once you're done with that, then we have to move on to a very important part, and that is acoustic treatment. Veronica and I made a very common mistake that I highly advise you avoid at all costs, because it will become very costly. And that is, immediately we were in a reverb chamber. We replaced the carpet with hardwood floor. That's a hard surface. We have sheetrock all around us, hard surfaces. Sheetrock ceilings, hard surfaces. All of those hard surfaces will reflect the sound off of them, and it becomes a big reverb chamber, which is really nasty for any kind of microphone that you're going to be using. So what did we decide to do? Order the peel and stick acoustic panels on Amazon. Not only did this look like shit when we put it on the ceiling, because it's really challenging, unless your ceiling happens to be perfectly leveled, to get the things to line up straight. They start overlapping in funky ways, and they just don't look very good. They're also impossible to paint or cover up, and when it comes time to take it down, you will be in a serious pickle. We spent months in this debacle trying to get the damned peel and stick acoustic tiles that we put on the ceiling off. We tried everything we knew to DIY it and get it done ourselves, but finally we had to hire professionals to come in and get that taken care of and repaint over. It was a very expensive endeavor.
Hi, Veronica.
Hey, this is so satisfying, you have no idea. Like, this is giving me so much joy.
The last tile.
The last one.
So what would you say to those who might get the bright idea to get on Amazon
Don't do it.
and get these?
You do it, look.
A better way to go about it, if you were going to use those type of acoustic panels that are peel and stick, would be to first purchase a big board and then stick the panels to the board and then screw that board into your ceiling. It'd be much easier to clean up 4 or 8 screw holes than it would be to clean up an entire ceiling of that peel and stick mess. So once we did that, we upgraded to some really cool GIG acoustic panels, which are pretty amazing and really give you that feeling that you're in a true production studio anyway. Now, the extra good news with your at-home studio, your office studio, is that this isn't a recording studio where you're doing voiceover or music production. You're creating content, which means we don't need to actually soundproof your environment. We just need to sound treat it. And most of the time, the only thing you need are rugs and curtains. Any of the walls that aren't going to be seen on camera, just put a curtain up over that wall. There's any number of colors you could get, but the thick blackout curtains do a really good job of stopping those reflections, of softening your hard surfaces, and really improving the overall audio in your room. If when you clap your hands or you yell, you hear an echo come back to you, which I still hear too much echo in here, we're still treating the audio in here, then you know your space is a little too reverberated. You need more rugs, more curtains, more soft material to absorb those sound waves. I will leave a link for these beautiful GIG acoustic panels in the description below. Hey, sorry to interrupt, but trust me, this is worth it. If you're looking to build a pro-level video podcast studio without all the guesswork and complicated gear decisions, meet our brand new Studio Blueprint Builder. We're talking about an interactive drag and drop tool that helps you map out your exact room dimensions and customize our ready-made Canva templates to fit your space perfectly. We'll guide you through the best camera, lighting, and microphone choices for your unique layout, complete with curated Amazon links so you can shop confidently without the guesswork. This is the exact process we use to set up studios for top-tier shows, and now you can do it too. So what do you say? You ready to build your studio? Head over to pss.media/shop and build your dream studio. Let's get you looking and sounding pro. All right, now back to the show. All right, you've done it. You've got your space looking amazing. It feels good. It feels positive. It matches your vibe. It's a place you want to hang out in. It's a place you can hide from the kids. Now it's time to get cooking, setting up a professional video podcast setup. We're going all the way to the exact equipment that the pros are using. All these classic podcasts where people are sitting across from each other on a table. They've got 2 classic podcast microphones, and there's at least 3 cameras going on. There's a wide shot where we can see both the guest and the host, and then the guest has their own camera and the host has their own camera. So the best place to start with is really just arranging and deciding where you're going to put the table. This can be a little bit of a dance, and I like to use the camera on my phone actually to get an idea of the shots that I'm gonna see and what is gonna appear in the background when I'm angling toward the desk at different angles. Once you decide on the position of your desk, you're gonna need to get setting up your cameras. Now, luckily, I have some assistants that work here at PSS Creative Media, Lance and Margarita Rosa. They help me to get set up, check the lighting, check the cameras and everything else so that I can get things right and focused and exactly how I want. So I'll start with Margarita Rosa's shot. I'll get her set up. Then I'll move on to getting Lance set up with his camera. I may need to dance around a little bit to configure these 2 cameras. And then finally, I'll introduce that 3rd camera where I see both the host or Margarita and Lance together in the shot. This will also let me know if the other cameras wind up being seen in my shot. So here is where you will need to experiment with different focal lengths for your cameras. Now, this isn't a complete deep dive into camera technology or focal lengths. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're interested in that. We do get into Sony cameras and I have a lot of resources for that. But I will say, if you don't know anything about focal length, it's the millimeter number on a lens, and it has to do with how zoomed in the lens is, you could say. So we need our cameras to be far enough away from our host and our co-host that they don't get seen in our wide shot. And that usually requires going higher than 50 millimeters. So a zoom lens may become necessary. In this case, I'm using this beautiful G Master Series zoom lens from Sony to get all the way up to 70 millimeters. And I use that for Margarita Rosa's shot. And then I use the 50 millimeter lens here, also a G Master, and my favorite Sony lens for the Lance shot or for the Steven shot. Finally, I'm using the FX30 Sony camera, and on that, I'm using the Sigma 16 millimeter lens to really get a nice wide angle shot. Again, I'll be leaving the link to all of this equipment right here where you're watching this video. So once you got those 3 cameras set up, you're also gonna need some good SD cards, and I like to go with at least 128 gigabytes on those SD cards. We'll need to format those cards and have those ready to record. Don't worry, we are gonna be getting more into recording in a minute, so hang with me. But once you've got your cameras all set up, now it's time to get cooking with the lights. And we're gonna need a professional, beautiful studio light for each the host and the co-host. And for this, we love parabolic softboxes with a grid diffusing panel on the front. And there's many different lights that you can attach to this type of a softbox, but they're these big, huge softboxes that diffuse the light and create a really intimate look on your subject. The lights that we like are anything by Aperture or Amarand, and the 2 lights that we're using in this setup are the Amarand 100D. I think those are perfect for at-home setup. They're also not too demanding on the wallet. What's really cool about these lights, and especially having the grid diffusion panel on the front of the light, is you can get them pretty close to your subject. Only the front part of the light is open, so it does a pretty good job creating directional light, and the grid helps with that even more. This way we can shine one light on the guest without that light really hitting the host. Now, one of these studio lights alone per person isn't gonna be enough. You are also gonna need some ambient light and some fill light to fill up your room. Luckily in our room, we installed some track lights, and I can move the track lights around to splash light in any part of the room that I need to for the scene that I'm building. A tip here with the lights is make sure that you get the right color temperature of those lights that you put into your track lights or any overhead lighting buying or any bulbs that you may be buying for lamps. We don't want, for example, a daylight bulb with a warm temperature bulb. We want to keep all of our lights in our studio set to the same color temperature. If it's a little more cool and blue looking, keep all your lights that way. Or if you're going to go for that more warm kind of orange look with your lights, then keep all of your lights looking that way. When you mix two color temperatures together, it makes color correction in post-production really difficult, and it also tends to like make some ugly things happen to the face. So don't do it. Just stick with one color temperature. Most people will opt in for the 5600 Kelvin or the 5600 K color temperature. In addition to the fill light that you'll need to actually bring your room alive, you may also need some additional lights to point at your subjects to fill in some of the shadows that you're probably going to get. For this, I love the newer LED panel lights, and I will leave a link for these in the description. These are my go-to if you're just starting out and you don't have it in your budget to spree for the real studio lights yet. Go with these newer LED panel lights. They're awesome, but you have to get the softbox upgrade that comes with them, because again, all the light that we want to use in our videos needs to be soft, diffused light. Don't use any light without a softbox attached to it. So these newer LED panel lights are amazing because you can kind of just point them anywhere you need to. And in this case, I'm going to splash Margarita Rosa or Veronica with one, and I'll splash myself with one too, just to fill in a little bit more of the side of our face to create more light around us. Now, one of the challenges you get into a lot in this type of setting is you're not going to be able to really eliminate the light on the back side of the people's face here, because we don't have any backlight or a way of getting a backlight in our shot without that backlight showing up in our camera. So unless you have a lot of vertical space, or you happen to have one of these track lights above you in a place that's behind your guest and your host, then you'll just have to deal with that side of their face being a little darker, but that can actually create a more intimate and dramatic feeling anyway. You'll notice this when you look at professional podcasters too. The Diary of the CEO, for example, you do seem to have that darker shadow along that side of their face, because it's likely very difficult for the crew to get a light in there and for that light not to show up in the wide angle shot. But another tip here is to get an external LED monitor that you can plug an HDMI cable from your cameras into. This way you can move that around with you and really move all of the elements around to get a nice balance between the three shots. So this becomes a dance. It really is a dance. Go into it with a good attitude and put some music on and be ready to take a little time getting things right. What about the audio? Well, there's a ton of different ways you can record your audio. Many video podcasters and content creators now are opting to get away from the traditional XLR microphone and audio interface method, even though these get a superior audio quality most of the time. And instead, they're going for USB microphones that have built-in audio interfaces and even audio effects nowadays, or clip-on microphones or lavalier microphones that can actually plug directly into the camera. And that can also be a time saver, a headache reliever, but it can also free up your hands and free up more room to create content. But as I said, if you're really prioritizing the highest quality of audio, you are going to want to go the audio interface route. And since this is our classic top of the line pro setup, we've got to use the classic Shure SM7B, arguably the most famous podcasting microphone there is. These bad Larrys go for about $400 US. They've got a really cool sound to them, and they just look awesome. They're like little guns. Pew, 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 pew. Hey, give me the money. Come on, punk. But we can't just hold these microphones up. I mean, I guess we could, but we'd get a lot of handling noise and we wouldn't get a very even sound. So what I like to do is actually go for a low profile desk clamping stand. These are my favorite. And these ones from Elgato in particular are amazing. We use two of those. They can hide the cables in them very nice and sleek. Want to make sure to wire those under the table. Want to really eliminate and try to get rid of as many cables and wires as we can, tuck them away and hide them away and route them in a way that's really nice and clean so we don't see a big mess of spaghetti in our shots. Once we have the microphone set up, we can plug an XLR cable into the bottom of the microphone, and the other side of the XLR cable will go into an input of an audio interface. This guy right here is my go-to. It's the SSL2 Plus. Not only is it economical, but it sounds great, and it performs really well with these guys, and you won't need to get any extra equipment to go with this microphone. These preamps will get it loud enough by itself, and this is a really good sounding combo. You'll thank me for it. But with this, make sure you use the 4K button. It has a really cool sound with the SM7B too. Here with this particular microphone, you can pretty much just crank the preamp or the gain knob up here almost all the way to about a 9, and that's gonna be a good level for most speakers. And that's it. That is your classic, world famous 2-person video podcast setup. So now I know that you are hungry to see it in action, so let's take a look. Here's an example of Veronica and I doing the podcasting thing. I'll show you the different camera shots in different ways so you could really get a vibe for what it looks like. And then pop back with me and I'll give you some tips and really help to make sense what you do with all this footage after you record it. How do you manage these files? How do you edit 3 different cameras together into one cohesive scene? All right, let's see if Veronica and I know how to podcast. Hey, Veronica.
Hi.
Hi, pass the mustard. How do you feel being back in this kind of classic podcast setup again, the 3-camera podcast setup?
I'm excited.
Are you excited?
I'm excited. Yeah. For so long, we were connecting remotely and, we went through the whole 2020 nightmare. I think things are changing, shifting a little bit when it comes to this type of content, video podcasting, and people want to see more that in the moment, in the same place kind of interaction with this type of setup. Being able to switch the cameras and see that the 2 people are in the same place, having a conversation.
Yeah.
It's just like more, makes it for more dynamic and more engaging of an episode. Instead of just having people connecting through Zoom or Riverside with the side by side. And, don't get me wrong, like those are still, good episodes to record.
They're still very valuable.
They're still very valuable. But for me, I enjoy having a place where you can bring your guests and record.
Yeah. I think a big trap that a lot of people fall into is we look at the Diary of the CEO, we look at the Huberman Lab, we look at the Rich Roll podcast, we look at Impact Theory, we look at the School of Greatness, and they all have a setup like this. And we want that for our business. We're like, oh, this is so cool. And it looks easy enough and they make it look so easy and we want to get there right off the bat. And, I think a better place to look at is to filter by their videos and go back to the very first video. And you'll see that the Hoobs, as I like to call him, and we're good buddies, so he's okay with me calling him the Hoobs. He started with, like all the auto settings on a camera with like a shitty fluorescent light in whatever room he was in. Yeah. Just like it's all awkward in front of the camera. Yeah. But he started. That's the thing.
Well, that tells you like, if your content's good, you don't need as many gadgets and you don't need all this. You just need a camera and a good microphone and just get started. And that's what he did.
And I think the other thing too is most of the learning that we find from content creation and podcasting comes from not only the doing it, like what we're doing right now, but also then the editing it and then the publishing it to the platform. And then I would say even more specifically, getting that audience feedback, like you mentioned. And so until you're actually in the throes of it, getting the audience feedback, until you hit publish, not until you hit record, until you hit publish and you share it with the world, you're not really going to have the insights and the information that you need to inform what kind of gear, what kind of studio you want. So we get this we buy every piece of equipment. We spend $15,000 for this kind of a setup. And then we realize, I think I just want to do solo podcasts instead. Or I think my audience would actually just respond more to like vertical video clips that I can make with a wire clip-on microphone on my phone.
But it's not only the equipment, it's also the content. It's also, we were reading that study published by Google about what audience is like. It was saying that how the importance of storytelling and the importance of paying attention to like really crafting a piece of content that emotionally connects with your audience. So you can have all of this nice equipment and not being able to pull that off, which in my opinion, like it's so easy to just go on Amazon and buy the equipment, you know, and it's very easy if you have the resources to hire like people like us to go and do all the setup for you and give you the training and just get you like ready. What is very difficult is to find who you are in front of that camera and that microphone, like,
Yes.
and how to connect with people that are not there with you.
Yes.
And some people have it, you know, they have this story, they have the purpose, they have the mission. You get them talking and they talk about like in their sleep about what they do in their sleep,
Yeah,
right?
they do.
But then they place obstacles so they don't start recording. So it's like we need to, in some cases, we just need to remove the obstacles and have a very simple setup. And then that person starts talking, and that's the good content. That's the content that people enjoy.
What do you think? Not too bad, right? I really love the setup. It's really fun. And it just makes you want to podcast like crazy and invite all sorts of people to your studio. And you are a professional. You're really cooking now. But now we hit another dilemma, and this is a big one. We have 3 different SD cards that we recorded to, and we recorded 2 audio tracks separately to a digital audio workstation on our computer. So we have to take that audio on our computer and somehow sync them up with the camera footage, but there's 3 different camera shots. So we're gonna need to switch between those 3 camera shots. This seems pretty complicated, and actually it is a little bit complicated. And usually if you're going to do a really good professional job of editing a multi-camera podcast episode like this is where you'll have to use a more professional video editing solution like Adobe Premiere. And that's because you can take advantage of Adobe Premiere's multi-cam feature, which is pretty amazing. And you can assign a number to each one of your cameras. And in this way, you can do what I like to call the switch and cut, which is one of my editing methods, and actually go through and cut your footage, but also switch the cameras at the same time. Make sure to check the description, and I will leave some more resources so that you can dive even more into this editing technique. But once you learn how to do it and spend a little time learning how to do it, it's actually pretty accessible and not that hard. But this is where I really advise you as soon as possible to outsource your editing and to not even fall into the edit your own podcast trap. In this way, the only thing that you have to worry about is file management, which means all you have to do is take the SD cards from each one of your cameras and organize those files, rename them, and put them in a G drive or a Dropbox somewhere that you share with your editor. You could also share the raw, unprocessed audio files that you record in a digital audio workstation. You can share that with your editor as well too. Your editor is going to know how to sync that audio up in the right way and to create a multi-camera sequence and really put together an amazing video podcast episode for you. But you will need to find an editor who has these unique skills, which could be a little tricky. Good news is world-class editors are available now more than they ever have been. In fact, we train world-class editors in our program, the Video Podcast EditLab. You can find out more about hiring one of our editors or even becoming an editor yourself by going to pss.media. Now, finally, I will say that if you don't know how to edit and if you don't want to manage all these files and if you don't want the camera to shut off after 30 minutes, which it will, and have to re-record a new take every 30 minutes into your SD card, depending on the camera that you buy, there are other options. There are other creative ways, workarounds that creators are using, and that is to use a camera switcher. Now, this one is my all-time favorite and one of the most amazing machines maybe I've ever encountered. I call it the RCV, which is also what Rode calls it, but that's the Rodecaster Video, the RCV. This isn't just a camera switcher, but you can also record your cameras into this machine, and it will record each camera separately as its own file. And you could record audio in here as well too. Look, it even has 2 audio inputs, and it will automatically sync up to the 3 cameras that you plug in via HDMI in the back. Now, the drawback with this is it will be in 1080p, and you won't be able to record in 4K, which can be a little bit of a bummer, but not that big of a bummer because of how much headache and time this can save you with file management. The other thing that this allows you to do is to try to perform your podcast live more, or to have a technician on set with you who can actually be switching the cameras and creating a live show. You don't have to broadcast your show live, but you could try your best to record it live. This way, the camera switching gets done live, and you could just take what's called the program or the mix of that camera switch and just edit on that. In this way, you actually don't even need to record to the RCV, and you could even use a different camera switcher like the ATEM Mini, and you you could send the output of the RCV into your computer and use it as an input source into a program like Descript or Riverside FM. But if you're using Descript, you can record directly from this camera switcher into Descript, and that way the camera switching is done as it's being recorded, and then in Descript you just have one file that you can cut. A lot less flexibility in the edit, but there are so many creative workarounds that you can fulfill your creative vision. So don't get discouraged from doing it. If you want to try the 3-camera setup, try it. It's fun. But if you don't have a background in photography, music, film, or audio production, I really recommend hiring a technician and getting someone to help you on set. This is a lot to handle on your own. And if you're gonna be doing it solo and you're gonna be inviting people into your studio to record with you and you're handling most of that yourself, it's gonna be hard for you to really put on a good performance and really be there present in the interview if you're so worried about pushing all the buttons and remembering to press re-record and set timers for when the cameras are gonna shut off and all of that. So even though this is accessible, more accessible now than it's ever been in history for us to have these kind of studios in our house, it will require at very least a good amount of training and patience, practice and trial and error on your part, or it will require hiring some help. And again, you can hire us in lots of different ways. Go to pss.media to find out how. We really want to see you become successful with your video podcast and your content, so don't be a stranger. Now, if you want a more tutorial style, actually step-by-step, learn how to set this stuff up to your computer, how it works with solutions like OBS Studio, we have this incredible video right here where we show you just that. I don't spare any details. This is basically an online course of a video right here, so go check it out now.